For the whole wheat bread, you need 7 tablespoons applesauce, 6 teaspoons vital wheat gluten, 2 teaspoons salt, 5 1/4 cup whole wheat flour, 2 2/3 cup water, and 2 tablespoons of instant dried yeast. That's all you put in it, Rob?
That's all we need. Those are the basics of any good bread.
Boy, that's easy.
It's easy.
That means you guys at home can make it too, and I can make it, right?
It's cheap too.
That's a blessing. We're all for that with the economy right now.
Exactly. Everybody should be, you can make it more nutritious and you can make it a lot more economically at home.
Yes, that's right.
A lot of people are afraid of making bread, but there's no reason to do that. The bread can be made very easily at home, and it's especially warm and stuff. In fact, I have a tip. If you're ever trying to sell a house, some people are trying to sell a house.
Right.
Make a loaf of bread.
I like that.
Mothers, ladies come in and they say, smells like home.
Yeah,
this is home.
Right.
And then so you got to attack all the senses. Bread, they say, ask a realtor, they'll tell you.
Yeah, that's right. Because it makes it smell so good. It
Right.
makes you feel at home and comfortable. That's right. Now, give us some tips here.
Okay.
Talk to us some about the
The
bread.
first tip, you know, and I think one of the important things about making bread is a lot of people are afraid of bread because I think enough people out there watching today know enough to know that if they had a recipe and I had a recipe, if they do the exact same thing and I do the exact same thing, you can come up with some pretty varied end products. And so today, this show is not so much about recipes, because recipes are a dime a dozen. You can get them off the internet, cookbooks, libraries, you can get them everywhere.
Right.
So we want to talk about principles of what makes bread turn out the way it does.
Oh, good.
The chief principle is flour.
Okay.
Now, there's 3 basic components of flour.
Okay.
There's the bran.
And we have a graphic of this, I believe.
We do.
So you guys can look at that graphic too. Okay.
So we have the wheat kernel is comprised of bran,
Okay.
the endosperm, which is the middle of it,
Yes.
and then we have the wheat germ. Now, in white bread, what they've done is they've stripped away the bran,
Okay.
and they've stripped away, when they've stripped away the bran, they've stripped away the germ. Now, God placed in that wheat kernel about 26 to 28 vitamins and minerals.
Wow.
And
that's a lot in one wheat kernel.
one wheat kernel.
That's
And so what happens is back in the 1800s, early 1900s, when moms started going to support the war effort, and bakers started doing it en masse, they started stripping away the bran because they realized that there was not a whole lot of nutritional value in the bran. And so if there's no bran in it, I'm sorry, if there's no nutrition in the bran, why do we need it? So then they got rid of it, and in doing that, they got rid of the germ.
So if there is no nutritional value, why do we need it?
Because it's the broom of the body.
It's got the fiber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have fiber, your GI tract is going to get all clogged up with all kinds of stuff.
That's right.
So in the endosperm, it has about 3 to 5 vitamins and minerals. In the bran, it has maybe 1 or 2. The powerhouse is in the germ.
Wow.
So what happened is they took away the bran, they took away the germ, they had the endosperm left, so they're down to 3 or 5 vitamins and minerals when God started off with 25 to 28.
That's a lot. That's right.
So they took it away, and then what happened was they then they figured out that if they bleached it, it would turn it white.
Yes.
And when they bleached it, they took out the rest.
Right.
So Webster's defines foods as anything that has nutritional value for the body.
Okay.
White bleached flour is not a food, as the dictionary defines it. So
I never would have thought of that, you guys. That's pretty amazing.
So it's not food.
Yes.
So, and then the government stepped in, and they realized in the early 1900s that a lot of people were starving to death with all the bread that they could eat because it was nutritionally deficit.
Right.
And they said, well, this can't happen in the United States of America. And so they demanded, and they did what only the government could do. They enriched the flour.
That's why you see the enriched breads.
Right. So they take out 25 to 28, and then they enrich it with 8.
Okay.
Now that's up to 9 because they added folic acid, I think, in 2003.
Okay.
So we're up to 9.
Yeah.
But so we at the Vegan Culinary Institute
They're at AUC.
at
Lincoln Community
AUC,
College.
we like to go with the whole thing. Just as God made it, we like to use it that way.
Yes.
And so we have the bran, the germ, and the endosperm.
Okay. Now tell me, there's different types of flour, because I know there's hard, there's soft,
Correct.
what's the best type for bread?
Well, the best for the consumer here in the United States, the best kind to get is just, it's labeled for bread, for home use. The difference is in the protein content.
Okay.
The higher the protein, typically the stronger is the flour. Now, if you're making a cake, you don't really want to use bread flour because it's too strong.
Yes.
And we have to develop this in the mixer. We have to develop the gluten and stretch it and pull it.
Yes.
And when we stretch it and pull it, it's making it tougher and tougher. And if we use cake flour, it would just break down the flour. And so we want to use a higher protein flour. So cake flour or pastry flour, if I made use cake flour for bread, it would not be able to hold the yeast because it would break down. And likewise, a cookie would be a good hockey puck if I used bread flour to make cookies.
Because it'd be super hard.
It would be super hard. It'd be super strong.
So just for my simple brain here, if we're making bread, the best flours for you guys at home, our friends at home, to use would be just plain old whole wheat flour.
Whole wheat, but see that it's designated for bread flour.
Not any.
Right.
Okay.
Normally what happens in the growing cycle, and we don't have time to really go into have a big baking
we got to get making this bread.
Right. Is it has to have a cold snap in the middle of its growing cycle. So it's usually winter red that is used as bread flour.
Winter?
Winter red.
Winter red, okay.
And it needs that cold snap. So most of our bread flour is grown in North Dakota, South Dakota, even up in Canada.
Yes, okay.
And flour that is grown more south towards Tennessee, Florida, Texas, and those warmer areas is typically softer flours.
Okay.
And softer flours are not good for making bread.
Right. Now, depending on where you live, what country you live in, it may be obviously a different part of your country for that, too, because we have an international audience here.
Correct.
Now, you said flour was important. You said something about water you had mentioned to me before the program.
Water is also very important. We like to use hard water for making bread. And when I mean hard water, I mean about 200 to 250 parts per million as far as trace elements, minerals, and from the ground.
We're getting scientific here.
We are. It's a science. It's an art and a science.
It is. That's right.
And so it's very important to have hard water. How do you know if you have hard water?
You can get it tested?
You can get it tested, yes. A good indication is if you go out and wash your car and then you don't dry it with a towel and it leaves spots all over it, you have hard water.
Oh, then we got hard water. Yeah.
And hard water is the best to use. It's terrible for using for cooking vegetables.
Okay.
Leaches all the nutrients out of it. But for making bread,
it's good.
Yes, it's good. So don't use distilled or soft water.
Okay.
Because it'll make your dough slack and sticky and stuff.
Yes. Now, before we start making the bread, is there any other principle besides water and flour? Anything else we need to remember? Or are those the two main principles?
Those are the two main that we're going to talk about. Also, the water controls the temperature of your dough. That's very important.
Yes.
In the summertime, I'm putting ice in my bread dough.
Okay.
Because the end product, after the mixer, I want it to be about 85 degrees.
Right. And if it's too hot in the area where you're rising it or something.
Right. If it gets too warm, then things are going to ferment too fast, and I won't have that good fermentation flavor that we come to associate with good baked breads. So in the summertime, I use ice water. In the wintertime, I'll use hot water. Like now, because it's a little cooler now in Illinois, I'll put in a little bit of warm water and not cold water.
Yes. Okay, show us how to make this bread here.
Okay, let's go. I'm going to take this bowl off. Now, I use a KitchenAid. I use a mixer.
Right, okay. Because we don't know what mixer you have at home, you just use whatever mixer you got at home.
Right.
Or you can use it the old-fashioned way and knead if you have to, too, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
In
That's
fact,
what I do at home.
I've met plenty of good bakers that never use a mixer.
Okay.
And so I use it because it's very difficult for me to make 100 loaves at a time without a mixer.
Yes, okay.
And
Right.
they do make me a little weak. Can you hand me a spatula there?
Sure. There you go.
And one of the things that I'm going to do here, and one of the problems that bakers have had in the past with whole wheat bread is it tends to be a little bit more dense than the other. I'm going to rinse this out with my water. So I use, So I use all of my applesauce in there.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that I want to talk to you this morning about is hydrating the flour properly. Because we are using the whole wheat, the reason why bakers have not liked using whole wheat flour in the past is because of its brand. It's very abrasive.
Okay.
It's like throwing 50 grit sandpaper into your dough.
That does not sound too good.
It's not
No,
good.
okay.
And so you tend to, especially if you're taking a recipe and you're converting it over to from a whole white wheat one with
Right.
regular flour,
Right.
and you convert it over, you want to you want to soak the flour. And the reason why we're doing this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this on and I'm going to mix it just until it's homogeneous. And then when it gets mixed, I'm going to set it aside for about 2 hours.
Wow.
And what that does is the bran is very abrasive, and as fermentation is happening, it's cutting the little fine cells that are in
or whatever.
the cells that are trying to fill up. If you can imagine a balloon.
Okay.
And the yeast is eating, and it's generating gas, and it's trying to fill up this balloon. If the bran goes by and slices a hole, now it has a hole that
It's like trying to fill a balloon with hole in it.
Exactly.
With a hole in it. That
You'll
won't
get
work.
dizzy and pass out.
That's right.
And so, and your bread will look very flat.
Right.
And so what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this on. I hope everybody can still hear me. We're going to turn that on. We're just going to let it mix until everything is homogeneous.
Okay.
When everything is homogeneous, we're going to let it just sit for 2 hours, and that's going to allow the bran to soak up the flour. Now, if you're taking another recipe and turning it over, you might see after a couple of hours,
Okay. But we don't have time to show you that either, and we've already mixed it.
And I have my dough knife here. This is my best friend in the bakery.
Okay.
And we're going to now divide this. Now, the initial proof is done. Now, after it mixes for about 10 minutes, we want to let it sit and let that yeast start to come alive. It's going to start to wake up.
Okay.
And now we're going to divide it into our finished weight.
All right.
And it's going to start the second proof, which is called the intermediate proof.
Okay.
That makes
cool.
sense.
I'm
We
learning
have
a lot. That's
an
right.
initial,
Initial,
and
intermediate,
and then a final.
and a final. Yeah. All right.
So we're going to make a couple of the bread here. Now, us bakers, we have a lot of fun in the bakery. First, we have a ball, and so that's what we need to do is we need to round this and put it into a ball. There's a couple of reasons why we're doing this. Is number one, if I started with something like this to make a loaf of bread, the weight and the mass is not evenly distributed, so it can be an ugly, non-symmetrical end product. So we don't want that. Number two, we have yeast zygotes in here that are just going crazy. Every 20 minutes, they're eating and they're reproducing themselves.
Okay.
So we have large colonies of mothers and fathers and grandparents and nieces and nephews, and they're all staying in one area.
Wow.
And so we don't want that. We want to move them around.
The family.
Yes, move them around. So we're
All right.
going from Massachusetts to Illinois.
That's right.
And we want to also, we have air bubbles in here. Can you see any of the air bubbles in here?
Oh, yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's air bubbles there. And so we want to move those around. We want to take the big air bubbles, smash it, get a little aggressive.
Okay.
And so we want to move those air bubbles around.
All right.
And so that, some people think that you have to have large holes in the middle to capture the butter and the jelly. And if that's who your customer is, that's what you need to do.
Okay.
But
But
if
normally you wouldn't. Right.
Normally.
Right.
Normally
Okay.
not.
Now what do we do? That would rise for how long for intermediate proof?
That'll rise for about it, and that's the tough thing about baking.
Okay.
Is people like hard fast rules that like you read off earlier, the recipes. You want a tablespoon of this and a cup of that. This is not so science. This is right here. We're into the art.
Okay.
And so it's difficult for me to tell, and I even hesitate to say any minutes. But the intermediate proof is the shortest one. We just want to relax.
Okay.
Usually about 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Now I'm also going to make maybe some little dinner rolls just to show you the
That's fun. All right.
versatility of this. Now, I normally use a scale. I love my scale.
Okay.
It's my next best friend beyond my dough knife here.
Okay. Yeah, and then what do we do with these?
We're going to put these in balls, too, so that everything is even and concentric.
And move those families around.
Move the families, move the air bubbles around.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm just...
All right.
between my hand and my thumb, we're just making a little ball there.
All right.
We
Boy,
can do
that
it.
looks neat.
We can do it like the other one too, but it just takes too long to, you know how I did that one.
Okay, show that. Okay, so then after this, then they rise for a few minutes. They just kind of settle a while, and then we put them in the pans?
Correct. Then we want to put it into our final shape.
Okay.
And then
show us how to do that.
Do it into the final proof.
It's okay. We don't have time for that.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so now, here again, we can work out some aggression.
Okay, you kind of beat out those bubbles, some of them.
Again, that's what we're doing. We're moving the yeast zygotes around, and we're making the air bubbles go around. And then we're going to start to roll it out.
Okay.
And then with the heel of my hand, I'm going to hit it, and then roll it.
Ah, I like it.
And then we
yes.
hit it. And now I'm going to bring the ears in.
Yes.
Give it one more.
Okay.
And then roll it over like this.
Oh, that looks professional.
And there's a loaf of bread right there. Now
beautiful.
You
got your pan, all
now
right.
we have a glass pan. Now these pans take a little shorter of amount of time to bake in.
Okay.
You
just spray it with some non-stick cooking spray there.
I'll put that in there, just like a baby in the cradle, and put it in a warm place to rise, and preferably cover it. The final dough temperature when it comes out should be about 85, but right now if it goes into 90 degrees, that's okay, and you don't want it to dry out. So you want to keep it moist, so put a towel, damp towel or something like that over it.
How long does it rise for? I shouldn't ask, right? This is art, right?
This is the art, but until about doubles in size. This can go anywhere from about 20 to about 35 minutes.
Okay.
Depends. If you have a cold kitchen, it's going to take longer. If you have a warm kitchen, if you're down in Florida or Africa, it's going to take a shorter amount.
Right. Okay. And what's it bake at in the
About 350 degrees. The bigger the product, the longer it takes to bake. So this will take about 40 to 45 minutes. But in a glass dish, it may take about 5 or 10 minutes less.
Okay. Okay. And what about the rolls? How long would they bake for?
Because
at 350 as well, or?
Yeah, at 350. But because they're smaller, only about 20 to 30 minutes. Depends on how many you put on the pan.
Right. Right.
Now you can put these on the pan just like this.
Okay.
Or you can stick them in water and then stick them in seeds.
Ooh,
or
that sounds good.
You can roll them out like this, like a little tiny baguette.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And then you can like tie them in a knot and put it
that's
just like
cute.
that.
That's very cute.
Or one more, and then we probably need to move on. We'll do this thing again.
Okay, so you roll it out again like that.
Yeah, I'm going a little fast, and it's resisting me because it hasn't had time to sit, but that's okay.
Right. Okay.
And then we pick it up in half, and then we're going to spin it.
Oh, I love that.
And then we're going to turn it like this and just tuck it underneath. And then
it's braided.
It's
almost.
braided. Almost.
It's very cute.
So this is my preference.
Is that your preference? Okay. Well, let's grab that bread here, and we want to show you guys what it looks like.
Okay.
We made all kinds of different breads to bring to show us, so I'm real excited. You got room there?
Yes.
Okay. Whoa! That's gorgeous, Rob. Boy, doesn't that look good.
Well, we have several different types of bread here. We have the dinner rolls that you saw us make, and then we have a whole wheat. We have squirrely bread, not because there's a squirrel in it, but because we think a squirrel would like it. It has 4 different seeds: sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, poppy seeds, and flax seed.
Oh, flax.
Yes.
Very good.
And then we have some French bread that, with just a little bit deviation, you can make with the recipe already given.
Yes.
And so just all kinds of bread. And it's cost about 40 cents a loaf.
Does it really? To make your own bread cost 40 cents?